Hey guys, my name is Anthony, and in today's video I'm going to be talking over round 10 in WOR at Paul Ricard. So if you want to see more videos similar to this, make sure to hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, stick around by subscribing because we're trying to hit 3,000 subscribers this month and we're getting closer and closer with every passing day. So I'd appreciate if you guys hit that big red subscribe button down below. And this was a pretty interesting qualifying session for me because for the first time I had no confidence around the track in terms of quali pace. So it was a different type of experience for me. I didn't really know how I should tackle quali when I didn't really have the confidence around the track to pull a lap out of the bag. As you can see, we ended up sliding and just ended up going right back into the pits because of that, and it was pretty interesting. I got a lot of suggestions from you guys when I was streaming this race, and as you can see, we tried qualifying on the medium tires, but coming into the chicane after the back straight, we just went a little bit too close to the curb and we ended up cutting it and invalidating our lap. So moving on to the final lap now, and you can see we're not at the beginning of the lap, we're actually towards the end of the lap, and the reason for that is because I was actually trying something different. What I was trying to do was qualify in P11, because if you guys don't know, when you are in the league races, the top 10 have to start on the tires that they qualified on. However, the bottom 10 get to start on a fresh set of tires. So I was trying to get as close to the top 10 while still being able to have a fresh set of tires, and I didn't know this whilst I was doing the lap, but the time barrier for P11 had actually changed whilst I was doing the lap. So if I had known that, I would have probably ended up pushing a little bit more than I did as we crossed the line now to do a 1 minute 29.2, which was good enough for 14th because again, the people had improved, the other people had improved the time of P11. If the times hadn't improved, I think that would have been good enough for P12, I believe, based on what P11 was when I had started the lap. So moving on to the actual race strategy now, we're going to be doing a medium to hards, and I wanted to showcase this clip at the end of the formation lap. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching the stream. If you're watching it, thank you very much. What? So as you can see, I was very confused because I didn't really know what happened. But moving on to the race now, you've got 5 lights and away we go. And I wasn't expecting the lights to actually go off as quick as they did. So we ended up getting a pretty bad start, but it actually ended up working out in our favor as we moved into turn 1. You'll see there's actually a bit of commotion going on here as the Red Bull pretty much is sideways and we drive right through the Red Bull, and we end up gaining 3 positions in the first 2 corners. And I was trying to think about going for a move onto the podium, but I decided against it because again, it was the first lap. You don't really want to rush things on the first lap because it's easy to lose the race on the first lap, but it's almost impossible to win on the first lap. You know, you're not going to get away from people on the first lap and win the race. So, you know, as long as we stay within the DRS of these people, then I'm happy about that. And as you can see, Dazed is on the soft tires, so we had a little bit more grip at the time, so he ended up getting past us, and I wasn't too fussed about that because again, he was on the soft tires and the soft tires go off very quickly around here. So I knew that as long as I just stick within a second of him, it would be pretty easy to overtake him again, moving on to say lap 5 or lap 6 when the soft tires have really started to go off. So that was the plan. And as we move on to the last sector now, the car felt a little bit understeery. You could see it when I'm going through the corners, and it wasn't just because of the amount of people in front of us. Obviously, dirty air is a big factor in this year's game, but it was just because the setup was a bit understeery. Even some of the guys watching had seen that it was a pretty understeery setup. So I don't know what to change. I mean, I would change the wings, but I'd lose a lot of straight line speed, and I felt as if I was already slow in straight line. So I'll figure that out once I do another race at France. But moving on to lap 4, as you can see, we are still within the DRS of the guys ahead, and we've actually gotten out of the DRS of the guys behind. And as you can see, Days end up making contact with Kyle, which gives us the opportunity to get past him, and we took it with both arms. So now we are, I believe, the second driver on the grid on the medium tires. So we're now in second place on the medium tires, and I wanted to just catch up onto the podium and try and get past him and try to be the #1 car on the medium tires. And onto the podium ended up getting outside of the DRS of Kyle because the soft tires were going off right now, and that's when I decided, okay, we need to get past Kyle and make sure that we get within the DRS of onto the podium so that we can try and make a move on this medium stint. because I wanted to be the first car in the pits out of the medium tire runners. And as you can see, the guys behind us on the medium tires are way behind, so clearly me and Onto the Podium had pretty good pace on the medium tires. And then moving on to lap 6 now, this is when some of the people start going into the pits. I want you to remember that FRA Square went into the pits here at the end of the race because something happens at the end of the race, and by this point we had already gotten back inside the DRS of Onto the Podium. So I wanted to talk quickly about my ERS management at this point, because I actually felt as if my ERS management was pretty good in this race. I have been watching a lot of league racing videos from other drivers, particularly Jarno Opmeer, for example, who is an F1 esports driver for Alfa Romeo, and I really feel as if my ERS management is starting to slowly improve. So I definitely want to make a video at some point on ERS management, just to help some of you guys improve your ERS management during your races. Like within this point, for example, I would have probably used the ERS down the whole straight to try and catch him up, but I realized that I wasn't going to be able to pass Onto the Podium by the time we had gotten to the braking zone, so I just kept hold of the ERS and just used it to push for the rest of the stint, which is exactly what we did. And moving on to lap 12 now, as you can see, me and Onto the Podium go into the pits. I could have gone for the undercut, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know, I just didn't for some reason. I just decided to stick with the lap 12 strategy that I had prior to the race. So moving on to the pits now. The stint was a pretty good stint, honestly. I didn't realize that I had a lot more race pace than I did quali pace, and we did really well on the medium stint, so I wanted to do even better on the hard stint and really try and get past Onto the Podium, which is exactly what we set out to do. And as you can see, moving on to lap 18 now, this is when we finally are close enough to Onto the Podium to really make a solid move, because I didn't have the straight line speed that I really wanted on the back straight, so whenever Onto the Podium got a decent exit, we weren't really able to get past him. But I decided to just use as much ERS as I possibly could to make the move and try and get outside of the DRS of Onto the Podium, because if I could get outside of the DRS for Onto the Podium, then I could really make a push for the guys ahead who are on the soft to hard strategy, and we could really try and make a dent in their race as well. But then moving on to lap 19 now, and then lap 20, we just couldn't really get outside of the DRS from Onto the Podium. So you'll actually see me, I'm about to say something which I think will be pretty interesting to you guys, so let's stay quiet for a bit and see what I've got to say. I've not got a lot of DRS, I might just let him back through. So yeah, that's exactly what I ended up doing. Basically, I just decided to let him pass because I wanted to save some ERS to make a final push on the last couple of laps. So what we did is on the straight we went back down into lean just so that it could give Onto the Podium enough time to make a clean move, and then that's when we decided to just try and stick right behind him, save ERS, because you're always using ERS in this year's game. There's no way that you can go to no ERS, which you could on the previous game, so you've really got to stick behind somebody fairly closely if you want to be saving ERS around here. That's exactly what we ended up doing. We did pick up a couple of penalties, actually no, I think we only picked up one penalty actually in this race, which is very good for us, to be honest. And as you can see, moving on to lap 25 now, it starts to get dark, so I thought that maybe it was actually going to rain on the last lap. Obviously, since it's the last 2 laps, you don't need to really worry whether or not it's going to rain. You pretty much just got to firm it on the slicks and just finish the race. Really, there's no point in pitting if there's only a couple of laps left, because you're just going to lose unnecessary positions. Then moving on to the final lap now, remember how I said that FRA Square had pit pretty early on, I think it was lap 5 or lap 6, well that actually came back to bite him at the end of the race. And moving on now, you can see there's a yellow flag in front of us, and that's because FRA Square had actually got a puncture, so that gave us a free position and we move up to 6th place now. So at this point I really wanted to try and push and get past Onto the Podium, because I don't think I knew whether or not that he had more penalties than me. I had a 3-second time penalty at this point, and I didn't know whether or not that he had any time penalties, because I don't think I checked, which I probably should have. But moving on to the final time that we're going to be on the back straight now, I decided to use as much ERS as I could, but again the straight line speed just really let me down, and I think that was to do with the wing setup, so I'm probably going to change that for the next time I do end up racing at Paul Ricard. So we couldn't get past him, sadly. But moving on to the final corner now, we get a pretty decent exit, and I can confirm right now that he did have more penalties than me, which means we actually finished in 5th place, which is a really good result considering I had no confidence that I'd have the pace during the race or even during qualifying to really perform here. So pretty happy with the result. P14 to P5 was way more than I could have expected from this race. So again, if you guys are struggling in quali, just try and focus on the race, because you never know, even if you start towards the back of the grid, you can still push your way through the field on a different strategy. And if you've got the race pace, it will still work out. If you don't have the race pace, then it's really all about just damage limitation, just trying to get as far up the field as you possibly can. And that's what I did here today, and we ended up getting a pretty decent result from that. So I'm gonna finish the video off here. If you learned something, if you liked the video, please hit the like button and stick around by subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you guys in my next video.